Hey, what's up, spooky fam? Today is all about you guys. I asked on my community tab for you all to let me know your horror opinions, popular or unpopular, maybe some spooky experiences, just anything horror related. Perhaps you had a question. I'm just really excited to dive into things that you guys submitted. So let's get right into this. If you guys enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more. Check out all of my links down below if you would like to see any more or support the channel any further. Let's get right into it. This is probably going to be a longer video, so strap in. Alright, first, I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to horror. I have a lot of respect for the genre and the creators of it, but for the most part, it is not for me. I play some horror games, but that's about as far as I go, and that is completely okay. Everybody has their own opinion, and I just love that even though you're not maybe perhaps completely in the horror community, you're still respecting and enjoying it at your own leisure, which is, I think, fantastic. I need more fun horror movies to come out. Movies that don't have an underlying message or themes of grief or abuse. There have been some fantastic examples of these over the years, but I'm ready for some old-fashioned slashers that don't take themselves seriously. Bring back the fun. If I may, I would like to recommend the film Slaughterhouse for this. If you guys want just a fun, mindless slasher where it's a little bit of a creature feature because the sloth is badass, definitely check out Slaughterhouse. It does not have any heavy themes. It is just a fun slasher. I think I miss classic gothic horror in film the most, but then again, some of the earliest horror I watched were from Hammer Studios. I love that. Hammer films are fantastic. When I was growing up, I grew up with a lot of those as well, but I also grew up with a lot of Herschel Gordon Lewis. My favorite being The Wizard of Gore, which I have mentioned a million times, and I want gore like that. I want the punch press gore. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. But as for gothic and horror, I think that we're gonna be treated with Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, which I'm optimistic about. I have never been much of a horror fan. I just have never found them scary. If they have a good enough story, I will enjoy them, but most aren't made for a story. Just throw a monster at people again and again in unexpected ways, and I feel like there's a list that I could be making to follow up to this. Possibly a list of what I like to call 5% horror, where the movie is just a really gripping film, but there is that slight horror element to it. I was traumatized by the flying monkey in The Wizard of Oz when I was 5 in 1960. Black and white TV, first time showing it on television. Then I was traumatized by The Birds a few years later. The old classic black and white horror films I find amusing. Mostly, I cannot watch horror films. I can read horror stories at my own pace and not be affected. I do appreciate the work you put into music videos and enjoy your art vlogs. Just not a horror fan, but please know you and your work is appreciated. I love that comment. Thank you so much. I just love sharing my passions with you, and I hope that you can just appreciate that I'm here sharing something I love, and that's what that comment makes me feel. But speaking of black and white films, there is possibly a new series happening on this channel pretty soon that I'm literally so excited about. I'm buzzing. So let's move on. Like, stay tuned because we're gonna be hanging out a lot more. I am not a fan of horror. I do find intense intrigue interesting, and once again, I feel like perhaps you would more like the 1%, 5% horror, where it's just maybe an action or a drama or a sci-fi, but there's just a little bit of horror thrown in there, and maybe we'll elaborate on that. I do have scary experiences. I have seen flesh pedestrians, for example. Please let us know. I would love to share your story. I have 2 stories to tell. Both are funny to look back on, but one is a bit sad. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I think I was still in high school in the late 70s when my mom, older brother, and I sat on the couch with my mom in the middle to watch Wait Until Dark on TV. We had turned off the lights to make it spookier. The movie stars Audrey Hepburn as a blind woman whose photographer husband returns from a trip with a doll that a woman on the plane had given him, not realizing that it had heroin smuggled inside of it. That's wild. In a climactic scene, she knows the drug dealer is going to come looking for it, so she smashes all the light bulbs to give her home field advantage. At one point, she throws developing chemicals in the guy's face and eyes, and it looks like he's down for the count. She gets to a phone to call the police or her husband, and my mom started saying he's not dead, he's going to jump out at her, and sure enough, he did. But my brother and I weren't startled by the jump scare. We were startled by my mom jumping at the jump scare, or screaming at the jump scare, sorry. After the movie, we took turns trying to out-scare each other. My favorite was when my mom went to the bathroom and I hung a crocheted Afghan over the door frame, so when she came out, she thought she walked into a spider web. I used to do that kind of stuff to my parents all the time. They would go to the bathroom and I would like stand there with a blanket hoping they would get scared when they come out. But that's a wild premise for a film. And secondly, from May 1980 to May 1990, I worked in a privately owned elementary school writing educational software. My boss had a son who was a huge fan of horror movies. He always saw them on opening day and sat in the front row so the light could reach him before the rest of the theater. I love that. He complained that people on the East Coast could see them 3 hours before he could. I complain about that all the time. My boss and his wife were kind of tired of taking him since they weren't really fans, so they paid for my time and ticket to take him for them. So in 1987, when I met the woman I eventually married, most of the movies I was seeing were horror flicks. We were friends for over a year before we started dating, so the movie she picked for her first date was Pet Sematary, because she figured I loved horror movies even though she didn't. She also figured any scary parts would give her an excuse to grab my arm and snuggle close to me. What I didn't know later was that she had to put her dog down less than a week before the movie because of a tumor in his stomach, so maybe that wasn't the best time for her to see that particular movie. Aww, that's so... Okay, A, I'm happy you married her, but B, I also feel like horror movies, in a sense, give us that catharsis, you know? It help us work through traumatic experiences. For me, movies like Hereditary is my comfort movie because it helped me work through my grandma's death. Honestly, like, I feel like if it wasn't for having that film, I don't know, I watched it like 9 times. Not a big fan of horror movies or books, but I love real ghost stories, or as real as you believe them to be. Just yesterday, I found a book that I lost years ago about ghost stories and legends from the area where I live. Ghosts and Haunts of the Appalachian Foothills. Got some interesting stories, and a few I've actually found the locations they take place at and locals that have heard them. I think that is so cool. There is nothing better than a local legend. I told you guys in the last Reddit horror stories about Texas Road here in my city, where people claim to see the Headless Horseman, and no such luck for me, at least. Thankfully. But I don't know, I love things like that. I love people who know the places so well that they're living that they can write a book about legends. I think that's so cool. But I also love the true aspect of things, and that's why I started doing the Reddit horror stories, because you never know what you're gonna find on there. When I was a kid, Dark Crystal the movie, its puppets looked creepy and scary to me. I am a huge Jim Henson fan. Dark Crystal is wonderful. I cannot get enough of Labyrinth. I just love the worlds and creatures he creates, but I can also understand, as someone who's terrified of scary faces, how that probably could have affected you. I forever was afraid of Atreyu from The Neverending Story. The irony is that the interactivity you speak of fits my comment. I remember seeing Nightmare on Elm Street when I was about 5, so I've loved horror movies for forever. And I've been a scare actor for a few small haunts as well as SeaWorld. But give me a controller for an intense horror video game and I'm an absolute wuss. You and me both. I can laugh at all the dumb movie characters going into the basement, but when I have to do it, it's a problem. I remember playing Outlast with a sweater, like I put the hoodie just so I could see a little bit of the screen. I was so afraid playing Outlast. I understand that completely. I love a good horror movie of any sort, but the ones that really impacted me were the I Spit on Your Grave trilogy. Although I thought the third one was a bit meh. The original one was good to me. It didn't have the same impact as the remake. I honestly agree, those movies, like when I remember being in high school and first seeing those movies and honestly okay, let me tell you, when my high school boyfriend thought it was a good idea to bring over a portable DVD player and we watched Deliverance together. And I think that's where my, tumbling down the road to disturbing films started from. But I totally get the like brutality and the hard to watchness of I Spit on Your Grave. And like I mentioned last month, with the movie Mother's Day, I put that off for so long because the female, like the male on female violence is, it's not that it's redundant. It is so redundant and it doesn't need to happen as much as it does. And I feel like with the I Spit on Your Grave, kind of all those movies, the rape of it eventually does get redundant and it does get so, like, there's also the movie Headless that had so much just like unnecessary violence. I didn't even want to finish it. It's not that I just didn't. It was so, okay, we're eating an eyeball again. Okay, we are decapitating and fucking the head. Like, I don't know. I think the most horrifying movie I've seen was Cabaret. No explicit horror, but much under the surface. Tomorrow Belongs to Me is scarier than any guy with a knife. And I almost feel like that is the Pearl, like I will not accept a life I do not deserve kind of situation. And I also feel like that fits into the 1% horror, you know, where it may not come off as something scary, but under the surface, there's something bubbling. Horror movies that don't have a happy ending are better than horror movies with a happy ending. I wholeheartedly agree. I love nothing more than dread. I love nothing more than a bleak ending. We actually just watched a film called 29 Palms. If you are into a film, it is just a couple going through the Palm Springs, the desert. They're just like driving around, they're fucking, they're living their best lives until there's a pivotal moment at the very, very, very end where you have like this crazy ending. I don't even want to like spoil it for you because it's like something that I wasn't expecting to happen. But it happens for like the ending 10 minutes is so intense that it makes that like build up to it worth it. And it was not a good happy ending. And I love it. I'm old enough that my first horror movie I've seen in the theater was Jaws. Scared the crap out of me. The next one to really scare me in theaters was An American Werewolf in London. I wish I would have been alive to be able to see American Werewolf in theaters and to see those Rick Baker effects on the big screen. before I knew anything about special effects. If I had a time machine, it would be to go back and experience the movies like that. Like, I want to see like The Abyss, like just things I want to see on the big screen with crazy effects before I knew about the effects. Does that make sense? Nightmare on Elm Street, Robert Englund as Freddy is the best. I made a TikTok about that. I agree, I did not like the remake. While I think it's a fun movie to watch, it's not good. You should check out the short Doll Boy. It's here on YouTube, and it's full-length sequel, Circus of the Dead. It's on Tubi. It's pretty screwed up, awesome flick that not a whole lot of people know about. So I'm reading that to you guys. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna put a picture here. I love Tubi films. I love movies on Tubi. We live on Tubi in this house. And I also love films that are not on people's radars. So here we go. Watching the original French version of Martyrs was not a visceral psychological body shock roller coaster, but its true brutal existential nature, when finally revealed, left me with the kind of dread that hangs around in your head for some days after viewing. I found it to be a very effective and affecting horror experience. Wholeheartedly agree. That's another film where I feel like the violence also becomes a little redundant, but once you get to that ending, it is so like, what the fuck did I just watch, you know? So when Alex and I, like, when I first watched Martyrs, it was like 4 years ago, and Alex and I were watching it. He was still living in New York, so we were kind of texting back and forth, and I was just like shocked by what I was seeing, and I loved it. I have not seen the remake, and I want to see the remake for video purposes. I did also watch Pasolini's Solo and decided it was just bad juju to even have that movie in my house. Such horrors and barbarism shouldn't look so cinematic. Its content so blatantly well defined. As a polemic on the nature of power and the human condition, corruption, consumerism, authoritarianism, nihilism, morality, and capitalism, it's hard-hitting as they come. Beautifully disgusting, one of those movies you can never unsee, and one you will likely never watch again. A truly horrific movie, but so much it cannot be within a mile of my house. Where is it? I am unfortunately in the minority of people who have it on Criterion because I am just a disgusting sicko. That's my red flag. But I agree, that is one that will, it is upsetting. It is upsetting. You wanna know what another upsetting film is? Let me just have a tangent here. There's a film called Anatomy of Hell. And it is, look at it, look it up on your own terms. I will talk about it again in my monthly wrap up, but there's a scene where I feel like they're telling you that it is a double of a child's body, but it doesn't look like it looks like you're seeing a nude child, like an actual child, and I am still like unsettled by it. Like I feel like I need to like rinse my eyes with bleach. I don't know. And I feel like that's the reaction you should have if you're like, just let me just like rinse my eyes with bleach for a minute. While cooking with my mom, I saw a lady in a black antebellum, think like Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind dress, walk through our dining room and disappear into the cabinet we have there. Later, I heard the neighborhood used to be on a plantation. Perhaps someone was reaching out and, I don't know, letting you know there's some negative energy where you're living. I don't know, that's what I would maybe take that as. All right, last here. My wife is a big horror movie fan, but she's very smart and likes the mind game ones. So like Saw, for example. Me, not so much. I don't mind watching some movies, but I get scared easily. We're watching American Horror Stories right now, and they're good. One that gave me nightmares when it came out was the original version of Wreck. There's one scene in Wreck when that body comes crashing down, and it's so quick and so abrupt and it's so shocking, I understand why that would stick with you. I feel like American Horror Story for me has dropped off over the years. I haven't watched it since Apocalypse. An unpopular opinion, I loved Apocalypse. Cut out the first like 3 episodes. Once that season's off and running, I loved it. I had a great time with it, but I didn't like anything after. I didn't watch anything after. Now my girl Kimberly's in it, and I just can't take her seriously. But if you like shows, like horror shows, perhaps you would like Channel Zero. There's 4, it's like an anthology series. The first season's pretty solid. It's kind of lower budget, but it's believable, and I liked it. So on that note, I am getting a sore throat. I have to do some main channel content, but perhaps we could do another one of these videos. Let me know your thoughts. I figured I would have you here for a while today, so thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it. I will see you guys very soon because I'm so optimistic for the future of this channel. I feel like I really understand and I know what I want to do now, and I'm so passionate about horror and this channel, and I really hope that you guys can see that, and I really hope that you stick around for more. So I will see you guys very soon. Sayonara, Spooky fam.